Hi everyone, this is Bonnie from Going Home to Roost, and today I'm so excited to interview Brittany Campbell from The Home Ground. She's going to be talking to us about how to write really great product descriptions for the items that you sell, whether it be on Etsy or Big Cartel or your own website. She is, in my opinion, a master at this, and her shop has always been just really great to flip through as a blogger. She has it all laid out, and so I wanted to ask her to come talk to us today a little bit about how she goes about it. So Brittany, first I'll just let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do and what you make.
Hi guys, I'm Brittany Campbell. I design and run The Home Ground. I make handcrafted jewelry. I use all natural materials, which is hugely important to me. And I never really thought of myself as highly as Bonnie does, so that's always how it goes, though.
Well,
I'm really excited to be here today and talk to you about this.
Good. We're excited to have you, and anybody, everyone should go check out your shop. I love your jewelry and the way that you write your product descriptions. So,
Thank you.
You're welcome. First, tell us why it's so important to, have a great product description and maybe even tell a story with your product descriptions.
Well, I think it's important to tell a story with your whole brand, first and foremost, with the layout of your website. And if you're on a shop like Etsy, your items themselves are really what you have to tell your story. You're not controlling the colors, the layout, and that sort of thing like you can on your own website. And so the description of your products in tandem with the photography is really what you have to tell the story behind your products. And people connect with stories. We're storytellers. Anyone, in branding will tell you that. And everybody, we connect with stories. And so if you can tell a story about your product in your description, that will really make your buyer connect with it on a more of an emotional level. Not only will they be more likely to buy it, but they'll be more likely to continue to follow your brand, like you on Facebook, become part of your community, and that's just as important as making the sale.
Yeah, so it's really part of your whole brand identity. You want to bring this into your whole brand identity?
Right. So you want to evoke not only the product itself, but your brand in each description. Each product is different, but they should all feel like they're part of, your brand. So I find that it's really important that while each of my products are different, they're part of a larger collection. And bigger than that, they're part of the home ground. And so I try to make sure that each description kind of fits with the rest of the shop while still showcasing that individual item.
Yeah, that's such great advice, because sometimes I'm terrible at writing product descriptions, and sometimes I'm tempted to just copy and paste because they kind of all work for this, all my products. But really it's important to make them all different because every product is different, and then tie them all together. I like that. Right,
yeah, there should be a similar thread that runs through them. And if there's something, really important about your brand, like for instance, one thing that I do is in each description, I include kind of a sentence about how I use natural materials. And so each piece is unique and isn't necessarily, it's kind of a disclaimer saying, you might not necessarily get the item that's pictured, but it's also, I'm really proud of that. That's why I use natural materials, is because it does, each piece, even with the same design, each piece is unique. And so that's something that I carry through the whole shop. And I let the rest of the description kind of be different. So there is kind of a give and take.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start to talk about, a lot of people, including myself, know that we should be writing great product descriptions. We have read about, how to do it, but we sit down and we're brain dead. So how would you suggest even just beginning? How do you get started?
Well, for me, this is the hardest part. The descriptions are the hardest part. We're makers, so the creative process isn't easy, but once you get into that flow, it is easy. And descriptions are kind of the same thing. It's hard starting with a blank page, but once you, like when I am launching a new collection, it's like, oh my God, I have like 20 descriptions to write, and it's kind of paralyzing. But once you start, it's like writing essays in college. Once you start, you kind of get into the groove and it gets a little bit easier. But I start personally with something that's easy for me.
Mm-hmm.
I start with several lists, actually. And, I design in collections. Not everybody does, but for me personally, I start with the collection, and I have a list of keywords, phrases, ideas that tie the collection together. And then I move on to each item, and I brainstorm a list of words for each item that not only describe not only describe the item, but also describe kind of the world in which that item lives. Whether, you knit a hat inspired by vintage Parisian designs, or, I design a necklace inspired by sunsets on the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of start there. And then after that, I take the list of words that I have that I keep handy at all times that describe my brand overall and my aesthetic, and might not necessarily have much to do with each item individually.
Oh, good.
So I kind of brainstorm all of these things that then, once you have all these words, it's a lot easier to write an actual description because you have all these words to get you started.
I love that, and I love lists, so that would really help to have it
I
all listed like that. That's great. That's really good advice. So most importantly, we just need to start. No matter how painful it is, just start.
Right. Just start with something easy. Just make a list of words.
It can be the hardest part.
Yes.
To just start. So cover what parts of the product do you think are most important to talk about?
Well, this is something that varies from product to product and from maker to maker. For me, my philosophy on this is that where you are very passionate, people will kind of grasp that passion, and they'll feel more connected to you, and in turn more connected to your item. So for me, my passion lies in my materials, choosing the stones, sometimes the history of the stone, or even just the way that particular stone reflects the light, or, it could be any number of things. Mm-hmm. So it's that and the inspiration, which is, like I said, kind of a collection thing for me, like the coastal collection. The collection as a whole is inspired by the coast, but each item kind of reminds me of a different aspect of that. And so that's what I really like to highlight. But for someone else, it might be, the color palette that you chose, or your process. If you have a really unique process, then that's something that you want to highlight, because people love knowing more about. The reason people will buy independent is because they can learn about the process, is because we're actually making these things with our hands.
Right.
So that's something that a lot of people prefer to highlight too. So it really depends, but I always start with my passion, because that's, again, the easiest way to start. It's the thing that you could talk for days about, the thing that you constantly bother your partner about, or, every time you go to work, you're like, oh, guys, I found this new yarn. That's, it's like, that's the easiest place to start, and it makes the most sense, because it's what I find that what you're more passionate about is also what differentiates you from your competition, which is also important.
Yeah.
So each person has their own set of passions, and that's kind of what creates your whole brand, and that's what makes you different. So I think
love that.
Yeah.
We're all, obviously, and hopefully, we're all really passionate. Otherwise, we wouldn't be selling our handmade, products or whatever. But I think, and myself included, I think we forget sometimes to really make our passions show through. But don't take that for granted, because it's personally one of my favorite parts about shopping handmade is learning about people's passions. So we should never forget to include ourselves. Great advice. So let's get into the meat of how to actually do it and frame it. How long do you think a product description should be, and do you break it up or use bullet points or write a book or keep it really short, or what do you suggest?
Well, I think there's definitely, this is kind of Goldilocks, really. You don't want it to be too long, because people will get bored or overwhelmed. if your description is really, really long, people will feel kind of overwhelmed and they might just leave without even reading it. But if it's really short, like I've seen descriptions on Etsy, this is a purple knitted hat.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've seen a few of those.
That's a lot of information. It's like when there's too little information, it's hard to build that trust with people because it's almost like you're withholding something. So it's kind of in the middle. And what I like best is a combination of paragraph or prose and bullet points. People, like we said, people love lists, and every product has certain things that I tend to call the vitals: size, material, weight, things like that you want to just be able to scan over. Because no matter how much somebody loves that, say you're selling a vintage peacoat, no matter how much I love it, if it's not my size, I can't buy it. And it's best to make that part of your description easily scannable, because if somebody can't find something like the size of your item, they're going to get really frustrated and might just leave your whole shop. They might not even look around. But if they see an item and they love your description, they love the photos, but it's the wrong size and it was easy for them to find that, they'll probably just search the rest of your shop. And you still might retain them. So I find that the part that you're passionate about and the way you describe your item should always be in paragraph format, because it's easier to connect with people when you're talking in real conversational English, but the vitals need to be in bullet point.
Yeah, great. I agree. That's definitely how I usually prefer to read information. So do you ever focus on SEO, like search engine optimization, or using keywords, or, do you mess with Google Analytics and all this stuff, or what's your take on all that?
Well, frankly, I haven't quite delved into this aspect as much as some people have, but it's something that I've definitely read about and pay attention to when I'm composing my descriptions. My primary use of Google Analytics is a combination of, I like to see where my traffic is coming from because that's really important to know. But I also do look at how many people find me through search and what they're looking for. And I find that my first results are always, the home ground or home ground shop or something like that. But if you dig deeper, you'll find that people are actually finding you by searching for, say, handmade stone jewelry or amethyst bracelet, things like that. And so what I find is that kind of I have two ways of going about this, is the set of words that you brainstormed when you first started writing the description, coincidentally make great tags and keywords. And so the ones that most aptly fit your item are good to include in the description itself. And depending on how you prefer to do it, maybe your item title. I don't do it in my titles. A lot of people do, though. And so I kind of use a combination of that. And then I think about if somebody was trying to find my shop, say I met them or they saw my they saw my shop before, but they couldn't remember the name. How would they try to find it? Because you want to be specific. You don't want to be so broad that there are a jillion other results from someone searching that term.
Right.
And so I find that kind of envisioning how somebody who already knew my work would try to find it again is oftentimes a really good place to start, and you get the most specific and most valuable keywords that way. And then I just try to use those words in the description in a natural way, not in an overwhelmingly, I'm stuffing keywords in my description.
Right.
I've seen those.
I come across them a lot, and
they're really off-putting.
It is, and as a blogger,
they're very authentic.
It's not.
And so it's really important to sprinkle them in a natural way, and then obviously use your tags as use every single tag that you can, and just throw all those words in there. And I find that definitely helps people find my work.
Yeah. Good advice. I definitely, have come across the ones that have a book as their title. And as a blogger, it's hard. I'm sure most people aren't thinking in terms of a blogger, but if I have to link to that, it's really just kind of confusing on what to use,
for me, it goes back to telling a story through your work and your shop.
Mm-hmm.
And if each title sounds like a string of eBay tags, it kind of ruins the ambiance, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And so, part of my process is that I actually title each piece. And so on Etsy, I'll put in, the title of the piece and then hyphen like a pre-night necklace, or, I'll put in what it is and the material, just really basic. So it's not obstructive for somebody browsing through the shop. It doesn't ruin the flow, but it does kind of tell people exactly what it is.
So it's authentic, natural, and also very descriptive and to the point.
Right.
Would you say?
To the point.
Yeah.
Very important.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Let's see. Is there anything that, we should not do? Is there anything that we should clearly not do while we write our descriptions?
Yes. The first thing my first description pet peeve, if you will, is poorly written descriptions. You don't have to be an English major by any means. Most of us are not. We are artists. And so, but it's very important at the same time not to have, 10 different typos throughout your listing. If it becomes a hassle for me to even, if I'm filling in your writing with misspelled words and correcting them in my head, correcting all these errors as I go, each error is an interruption. Mm-hmm. And eventually people are just going to feel like you don't care that much. Especially words that are just blatantly misspelled and spell check could have caught. And, grammatical errors that are really obvious.
Right.
The occasional and instead of a, not as big of a deal. But when it's something that's really obvious and really kind of elementary, it makes people start to feel like, it's not that professional. Mm-hmm. And so even if you're not, a professional wordsmith, find a friend who is, whether it's, the easiest thing would be if it's your partner or your roommate. But if it's someone who you can occasionally just quick send an email to and they'll check it for you, do it. It's not that much of a hassle. I know some of us are writing descriptions in the middle of the night. I've definitely found myself with an imminent product launch and I'm still, furiously writing at like 2 a.m.
Yes.
It's not that feasible. But, post it and then the next day have someone proofread it and get it corrected as soon as you can. Because it's something that's really simple to correct, but can really hurt you.
Yeah. I always like to say that there's a big difference between handmade and homemade. And we're shooting for handmade here, which is beautiful, awesome photography, professional, could have been bought at a shop and not homemade that, like glued macaroni.
I've seen, I don't want to turn into regretsy here.
I know.
But I've seen, pictures of items that were clearly taken like in a basement.
Yeah.
Like there's no natural light. It's not even good fake light. And the description is just crazy talk.
Yeah.
And, it just makes you kind of feel uneasy.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing is don't ramble. It's really easy. I mean, you might think to yourself, how could I ramble when I can hardly start writing a description? But surprisingly, it can be easy to get carried away and just keep, it's like once you get into it, to like write your whole life story. And then I ended up making this item. Don't do that. Don't do that. Your life story is for your about page and your blog. Talk about exactly what pertains to this item. It's easy to get carried away, but it's really important to remain concise and clear. So I find that, kind of rambling on and on and on, it's kind of like, okay, make your point,
Right.
And then the last thing that I would say to try not to do is to use too much jargon that's particular to your industry or your line of, your field. I find this a lot with, for example, people who knit items. I used to knit a lot, and so I understood the jargon, But somebody like, my mother-in-law who's searching for something, say she's looking for a scarf, and she sees, this scarf was knit in the round with moss stitch, and it goes on and on about parts of the process that average people aren't going to really understand or care about. It just becomes one more thing that gets in the way of what you're really trying to tell someone and how you're really trying to connect with them. Because if you're using a lot of words that people don't understand, it makes them start to feel uncomfortable. And sometimes it borders on like, should I know this? Do I not know what I should? And it can really turn people off. And it's best to talk about, like in that example, instead of telling people that you used a moss stitch, talk about the texture. Moss stitch is a textured knit stitch. Talk about the texture that stitch creates without focusing on the technical details. Because that's what people are going to connect with is, things like the texture of the piece, the way, say, a certain stone reflects light, the way something feels in your hand. That's what people really connect with. And so it can be easy for us to talk about things in terms that we understand, but you have to make sure that your buyer is also going to understand it. Otherwise, it just gets in the way.
Such good advice. I don't know if I would have ever thought about that, because it almost probably, when you're writing it and you're using all this jargon, it probably makes you feel like you're showing your expertise a little bit.
Right, and it's really natural for you.
And it's natural.
That's what you make. It's natural for you. You probably, say in this example, you have a whole book of stitches, and you probably have half of them memorized.
Right.
But, for other people, they don't care about the name of the stitch unless it's really, really interesting and integral to the piece.
Yeah, that's so true. A lot of times I do this with my blog posts and titles too. I like to think about, literally, if I was somebody sitting down at my computer, what would I want them to Google search to find me? And that's how I come up kind of this reverse way of titling my blog posts and items or whatever. And if they wouldn't be putting in a super specific jargon, leave it out, because it'll just get in the way of your awesome search engine results too, probably.
Yes, that is also very true.
Excellent advice. Good. Well, if you don't have anything else, I think this starts to wrap up our interview, but I also wanted to share with everybody that we're also releasing a workbook to the Roost Tribe to accompany this interview. It's going to be really juicy and good, and also a printable for everybody that you'll find on my blog, goinghometoroost.com, and we'll post it below the video. Brittany, do you want to talk about the workbook at all?
I'm excited about it.
I'm excited about it.
It's kind of a really easy, simplified, it's a 10-step process, but it's also, I tried to kind of coach you through the process. Because it's really easy to say, do this, do that, but it's quite another thing to actually tell you what I mean, or to kind of provide some additional information. Yeah. So it's definitely stems from my process, but I think it'll be really helpful, and I'm actually excited that I get to use it now, too.
I know, me too.
I think it'll help me stay focused when I launch my next collection.
Yeah, I think we all, myself included, have a lot of work to do, but you've made it easy and very inspiring for us, so...
Well, good.
Thank you, Brittany. Everybody check out The Home Ground. We'll post a link to that below our video as well, and thanks for watching. Bye.
Thank you.